Hi there, it's Kat Caracelo. I wanted to bring you a couple of altered book ideas today. So, the first one I'm going to talk about is an altered board book. And this is a really easy form that allows you to create a visual narrative using a children's book. So, all of these chunky board books that your children have outgrown, you may want to find one that you love and maybe it means something to you, and some of the images in the book will become part of your narrative. So you can create around them, you can collage around them, paint around them, and have some of those images pop through. But the book itself makes a great hard surface, and it leaves you with a really wonderful chunky book that reflects who you are. And I love them. They are so much fun to create with. You can create all different sizes, and you can see how each spread has its own identity, it has its own story. There's an evolution. This particular book seemed to be themed for me around seasons, so I went with that theme. You can cut doorways through the book pages and have different things happening, have peek throughs. So you can do a lot with these little books. So what do you do first? Well, I take the original board book, and because they're very, very shiny, I sand them. And I use the kind of sander that you buy at a nail salon, and I just rough up the edges. Just kind of making my surface a little bit less shiny. And then I paint. I paint the whole book, and I just paint it, I loose paint it. And that gives it a little bit of sticking surface. It allows me to obscure the imagery and sort of get a sense of the shape of the book. This one happens to have tabs, which is kind of fun. So I really loved that. And I also put in some words. So I embedded some words of my own underneath the paint. So on one page it says story, and on another page, lost and found. Then I noticed this page has a wonderful doorway, and I thought maybe I'll cut a doorway right there and use the original book as inspiration. So that's how I kind of tap into the energy of a board book. I see what does it want to be, what's coming through it to me, so I do work with the surface that way. And again, the sanding and roughing it up, getting the paint on there, it's a layered process. And for me, that's really important. Then I start working with images, and I do it really intuitively. So I bring in some images, some old maps, maybe, objects, and I see what wants to be here, what wants to be on this page. And it's then that I often will come up with my theme. I don't exactly know, so I work with images, and I play with them, and I say, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right for the tabbed book. But this one does, this little sleeping boy and this wonderful lake with swans. This feels like this book. So I start to feel my way through and find images. Then I'm literally telling a story. So page by page, there's a narrative. Now it's interesting because I tend to do that kind of linear building in board books. So for me, I think because of their solid nature, I do create them in a more linear, direct way where I'm following the thread of each page to each page. There are other kinds of books that I create that are very non-linear. So these little books, and I've described this in another video to you, but I create all of these pages out of order. and then I put it together at the end. And these are all, there you go, these are all collaged and painted watercolor paper. And then they're put together and tethered in the middle. So that's quite it's a little bit of a different process, another really easy idea. The thing about board books too is you already have your pages, you have the entire book put together. So really the biggest problem is getting everything to line up. So a little trick is when I start a board book, I create a little template for myself so that I can cut my backgrounds and have them fit. I also will score and actually split the images, not on every single page. Some of them you can see are intact. Some of them are scored. That's because some pages lie flat. Some pages will get stuck and they won't open all the way unless you score them. So you'll want to score maybe every third page, but you can create and actually figure that out at the end. Another little trick of the trade that I like to use is after I get my pages in, I like to sand the edges. And the reason for this is because any kind of paper that's hanging over the edge, you'll want to get it off and you'll want to have these nice, smooth, round edges. So by sanding the paper into the edge, having glued it very well and maybe used a squeegee to really smooth it on, smooth out any bubbles, you let the glue dry. You can use Yes Glue, you can use rubber cement, you can use glue stick, but using a squeegee or using some kind of a boning folding tool to make sure that a credit card works, just to make sure that it's very adhered, and then sanding all these edges out, because then you're going to get these beautiful round kind of soft board book edges. You can also then take a gold pen and you can actually paint gold on all your edges. So you could do all kinds of embellishments. You can use paint on top of your images. You can embellish with rubber stamps. You can embellish with pen. You can use it like an art journal. So just because it's a board book, it doesn't need to be completely collaged. It can be mixed media. Then another form that I love is the file folder book. So I want to show you that. That's my last share for today. So a file folder book is created literally out of file folders, and you can see that I use just a very thick tape, and I happen to love duct tape. So I use duct tape, and then I use that same light scrabbling effect on all the pages after I duct tape them together. And you can either duct tape this way, where you're doing one strip down the middle, or you can do little hinges. You can do 2 strips. And this can be for any size board book, any size accordion book, excuse me. So this is what you can create. The accordion book is a very flexible form for visual narrative. And you can see it is over 8 feet long. This too has a narrative, has direction. Each spread has its own identity. I begin with this open painting style. Then I collage, and I leave a lot of white space. And then I paint in around my collage, and I paint on my collage. And on this particular one, I have not added any words, but sometimes I do. I'll write in. I will layer in words and ideas. Sometimes I'll start with a poem and I'll write that right onto my blank surface. So this is a simple old file folders. And look at what a fantastic creative space they make. I do these in all sizes. I do them small, I use index cards, use big. So really, really easy, fun idea. You can add that same idea that I did here of ribbons, tying it closed. You can button these closed. You can sew on these. You can actually put these through a machine and stitch onto them. You can glue objects onto them. So very, very versatile. So there are 3 ideas for wonderful, wonderful, easy visual narrative book forms. And I invite you to play with them. Thank you. This is Kat Caracelo. Happy creating.